All right, before we get into these additional services, not sure why my icon's not popping up there. But yeah, before we get into those services, just know that serverless is kind of a bad name because, of course, right, we're still dealing with cloud computing. Servers are still involved. Serverless is really just a term saying, hey, you don't have to manage the server. Of course, there is still a server being managed, but AWS is in charge of that. Now, remember, we have our different models, right? Our different types of cloud computing. We have platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. Think about serverless. Where would that fall? If there's less responsibility, is it infrastructure or is it platform? Which one of these categories would serverless fall under? You're going to see that in some of the questions on the next slides. All right, so serverless compute services include AWS Lambda, Fargate. So again, they're just taking away some of that responsibility of managing and configuring the servers, the instances. So it's not serverless. It just means you don't have to worry about the servers. All right, so EC2 versus serverless computing. Hosting an application in EC2 requires you to configure your instance, upload your code, and then you still have to manage the instances while your application is running. Remember, whether that's scaling, whether that's changing, right, the instance types beyond that point, regions, all that stuff, right? That's going to be handled entirely by you. Of course, right, AWS is handling the hardware and making sure that you do have instances to run on. Now, in serverless computing, it's going to eliminate step 1 and 3. Really, all you have to do is upload your code. So it's going to eliminate the need to configure and manage servers. So scaling is still handled automatically in the serverless. And although you can still adjust computing capacity, such as amount of throughput and memory, most of it, the work, right, is going to be handled by AWS. So notice the question there, right? Is EC2 an example of infrastructure or platform as a service? So key characteristics of serverless computing: there's no server management. Scaling is automatic. Of course, we still have the pay-as-you-go pricing. So the big difference, though, is in EC2, right, you're expected to pay even when your instances aren't doing work. If your instance is running, you're paying for it. The cool thing about serverless is, say you aren't doing any work with your application, you're actually not going to pay for that idle time. So you're only paying for the compute time that you consume. So how does that even work? How is that possible? Well, serverless applications are typically event-driven. So they're responding to specific triggers or events, such as requests, file uploads, or database operations. So they're not actually going to start using computational resources until this event happens. So that means when there are no events happening, it's idle. So you're not going to be paying for that. So although you have less control, right, over the servers, there's going to be extra flexibility. So, flexibility and control, those are always going to be kind of competing interests when it comes to cloud computing. So you want less control. You're going to get you don't want as much control. That means you're going to get more flexibility. If you do want more control, you're going to have a little bit less flexibility in terms of the pricing, I should say.